Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment what you thought about the story. My sister tried to steal my fiancé by proposing to him right in front of me, just to see if he would choose her instead. My name is Claire, and the whole mess started because my fiancé and my younger sister had dated for less time than some people keep leftovers in the fridge. My name is Claire, and looking back now, it still amazes me how something so important could stay hidden for so long. That sounds like the kind of detail someone should know before getting serious with another person, right? Believe me, I thought the same. The problem was, neither of us knew. I'd moved back to the city after spending 2 years in a small town, following a relationship that ended so badly that I still couldn't hear the words, fresh start, without wanting to throw something. I came back with 2 suitcases, a nearly empty savings account, and enough embarrassment to avoid most family gatherings for the first few months. My parents treated my return like proof they had been right all along, which was frustrating, but I needed somewhere to stay while I looked for work. So I smiled, kept my opinions to myself, and got through it. Eventually, I landed a receptionist job at a small outpatient clinic. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I answered phones, checked patients in, handled insurance forms, and spent half my day explaining that arriving 40 minutes late didn't mean the doctor had personally betrayed them. Honestly, after the chaos of my last relationship, those predictable complaints felt strangely comforting. Every morning before work, I stopped at the same coffee shop near the bus stop. That's where I met my boyfriend. He worked in building maintenance for an office complex a few blocks away, and he was always there in his work boots, holding the same plain coffee like it was the only thing keeping him going. We first started talking because the bus was late again, and he joked that the route must have been planned by someone who hated employed people. I laughed a little harder than the joke deserved, and he noticed. After that, we kept running into each other. At first, it was just small conversations about the crowded bus, TV shows we both watched, or the bakery display that looked far better than anything either of us could afford before payday. Then he started saving me a seat whenever the coffee shop was crowded. I started ordering his coffee if I got there first. A month later, he asked if I wanted to have dinner with him. I said yes. Then immediately went into the clinic bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror like I'd just agreed to a hostage negotiation. Dating him felt easy in a way I didn't trust at first. He never pushed when I got quiet. He didn't turn every disagreement into a test of loyalty. He fixed little things around my apartment without acting like I owed him endless gratitude afterward. Of course, he had flaws. He could be stubborn when he thought he was being practical. He shut down whenever arguments became too emotional, and he had a habit of saying, "I'm fine," with the facial expression of a man planning to disappear into the woods. Even so, he was kind, dependable, and normal. By that point in my life, normal had become incredibly attractive. I told him I had sisters, but I never talked about them much. My older sister and I were close. My middle sister, the quiet one, usually stayed out of family drama. My younger sister and I, though, we'd always had a complicated relationship. According to my mother, she was just sensitive. According to my older sister, she was dramatic. According to me, especially on my less patient days, she was simply exhausting. He told me he'd briefly dated someone he met on an app a few months before meeting me. It had lasted less than 2 months, never became serious, and ended because he didn't feel the connection he was looking for. I didn't ask to see any pictures, and he didn't offer them. Adults have pasts, and I was trying very hard to be mature about that. The name he mentioned was common enough that it meant nothing to me. My younger sister also used our mother's last name socially, while I used our father's. There was a long family story behind that involving a temporary separation when we were teenagers, hurt feelings, and paperwork. No one ever bothered to change it later. At the time, it seemed completely irrelevant. We dated for almost a year before I decided to bring him to Christmas dinner. Looking back, that decision still makes me want to gently shake my past self by the shoulders. He had to work for part of the holiday because a pipe had burst in one of the office buildings, so he was running late. I arrived at my parents' house alone, carrying a dessert I'd bought from a store and transferred into one of my own dishes because I wanted credit I hadn't earned. My older sister was already there with her husband. My quiet sister was helping set the table. My younger sister was on the couch scrolling through her phone and complaining that the heat was too high. My mother asked to see pictures of my boyfriend. Without thinking, I handed her my phone. She swiped through a few photos, smiled with approval, then passed it to my father. Soon, my phone was making its way around the room like a family exhibit. My younger sister barely looked up until my quiet sister held the phone out to her. Then her entire face changed, I mean completely. The color drained from her cheeks. Her mouth tightened and she looked at me like I'd walked into the house wearing her skin. "Come with me," she said, not asked. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the kitchen. I pulled my arm back because I hate being dragged anywhere, especially by family. "What is wrong with you?" She lowered her voice, but the anger was already shaking through it. "That's him," I stared at her. "That's who? The guy I dated." For a second, my brain simply refused to process the words. I actually looked back toward the living room as if there might be another man in the photos. "What guy?" She gave me a look of complete disbelief. "The guy who dumped me. The one I told Mom about." She had told our mother, not me. That distinction mattered, even if it apparently didn't matter to her. I asked how long they had dated. She said nearly 2 months. I asked if it had been serious. She said that wasn't the point. I asked if they were still in contact. She snapped that he'd ended it and disappeared. "Disappeared?" I asked. "Or did he stop contacting you after ending the relationship?" She looked like she wanted to slap me. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Make everything sound reasonable so you can pretend nobody else has feelings." That was unfair, and because it was unfair, it hit exactly where she knew it would. Before I could answer, the front door opened. My boyfriend stepped inside carrying a bottle of wine and apologizing for being late. He looked tired, cold, and completely unaware that he'd just walked into a room where his dating history was sitting beside the mashed potatoes. Then he saw my sister. He froze. Not for long, maybe a second, but I noticed it. He looked at her, then at me, and quietly said my name. My chest went hot. She told me. Everyone went silent. My father was still holding my phone. My older sister's husband suddenly became very interested in a bowl of dinner rolls. My boyfriend slowly set the wine on the table. "I didn't know you were sisters." My younger sister let out a short, humorless laugh. "Of course you didn't." He looked back at me. "Do you want me to leave?" That question honestly saved him. If he'd gotten defensive, laughed it off, or acted annoyed with me, the night could have ended very differently. Instead, he looked genuinely sick over the situation. I wanted him to stay, partly because I believed him, and partly because my sister was watching me as if she expected me to give something up. That second reason wasn't noble, I know that. But it was true. "No," I said, "stay." Dinner was awful. My mother kept trying to force cheerful conversation, which only made everything worse. My father talked too loudly about work. My younger sister barely touched her food. My boyfriend answered every question politely while looking like he'd rather repair a sewer line with his bare hands. Later, I pulled him into the hallway near the laundry room. "Who ended it?" "I did." "Why?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "Because it wasn't going anywhere. She wanted more and I didn't." "Were you still talking to her when you met me?" "No." "Did you know her last name, the one she used?" "Yes." "Not yours?" "No." "Did she ever show you pictures of us?" "Not that I remember." Claire, I swear, I had no idea. I believed him. I hated how quickly I believed him because part of me felt like I was betraying my sister, but I did. Later, while I was packing up leftovers, my mother overheard enough of our conversation to corner me. "She's always been more sensitive about rejection," she said. "You need to think about how this affects her." I looked at her. "How does dating someone I met months after they broke up become something I did to her?" "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant," my mother sighed, already looking exhausted even though the conversation had barely begun. "You're the mature one. I'm asking you to act like it." That sentence should have been my warning. It wasn't new. It was practically the motto in our family: be mature, be understanding. Set the example. In our house, those words usually meant the same thing: give your sister what she wants and don't upset your mother by arguing. After Christmas, my younger sister barely spoke to me unless she absolutely had to. She skipped my birthday dinner, ignored messages in the family group chat, and once left my parents' house just 10 minutes after I arrived. My mother treated this as proof of how deeply hurt she was. My older sister called it emotional manipulation. I tried not to label it at all because I was still hoping the problem would eventually fade away. Meanwhile, my relationship kept moving forward. My boyfriend met my friends, I met his family. When the rent on my apartment increased, we signed a lease together. During our first week living together, we had a completely ridiculous argument about where to keep the cleaning supplies. It lasted almost an hour and ended with both of us laughing because neither of us actually cared. That was the kind of conflict I understood. Two tired people being stubborn, then getting over it. The family conflict was different. Nothing ever ended, it simply waited. Several months later, my boyfriend planned a dinner with both of our families. He told me it was to celebrate a promotion at work. I believed him because apparently I'm very easy to distract with pasta. To my surprise, my younger sister came. She barely spoke to us, but she sat beside my mother and acted almost pleasant through the appetizers. I remember thinking maybe enough time had passed. Looking back, that thought feels almost innocent. After dinner, my boyfriend stood up. His hands were shaking. I thought he was about to give a speech about work. Instead, he walked around the table and knelt beside my chair. I covered my mouth. Everyone reacted at once. His mother burst into tears. My older sister made the kind of excited sound that suggested she'd been waiting for this moment longer than I had. Then my younger sister jumped to her feet so quickly that her chair scraped loudly across the floor. "Are you serious?" The room fell silent. My boyfriend was still on one knee with the ring box open. I looked from him to her, completely unable to understand why she was saying anything. She pointed at him. "After everything. You're really doing this in front of me?" My face burned. "Sit down." "No, this is humiliating." "For who?" my older sister asked. My younger sister turned toward me. "You knew how I felt, and you knew this dinner wasn't about you," I replied. That was when she started crying, loudly and angrily, the exact combination that always made my mother rush to comfort her. My mother stood, but my older sister reached her first and gently grabbed our younger sister's arm. "I'm not a child," my younger sister snapped. "Then stop acting like one." The two of them walked out of the dining room while everyone else stared at me. I wish I could say I focused on the man kneeling beside me with a ring. I didn't. I kept staring at the doorway, shaking with anger and embarrassment. The whole room suddenly felt ruined. My boyfriend slowly stood up. His mother came over quietly and asked if everything was okay and whether there was something about the situation they didn't know. She wasn't accusing me. That somehow made it even worse. She was simply worried about her son, which was completely fair. And in that moment, I felt like my family had made me look like someone who couldn't be trusted. I asked my boyfriend if we could step outside. We walked around to the other side of the building so we wouldn't run into my sister. In the parking lot, he slipped the ring box back into his pocket. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "You didn't do this. I brought you into it." He looked completely drained. "Claire, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest." My stomach tightened. He took both of my hands. "After everything that's happened, do you still want to marry me?" It wasn't the proposal he had imagined. There were no cheers, no perfect photos, no romantic setting. We were standing beside a dumpster while a delivery truck beeped somewhere behind us. "Yes," I said, "I do." He let out a long breath like he'd been holding it in for months. Then he took the ring out again and gently slipped it onto my finger. I cried. He cried a little too, although he denied it afterward. We kissed in a parking lot that smelled faintly of old onions. Strangely, that moment felt far more real than the dinner ever had. My sister never apologized. For weeks, she stayed away from every family gathering. My mother kept saying she just needed time. My father, as usual, said nothing at all. Silence was always his way of dealing with conflict. About 2 months later, my younger sister finally sent me a message. She admitted she had ruined the proposal and said she wanted to apologize in person. She invited both my boyfriend and me to dinner at her apartment. I stared at the message until my phone screen went dark. My boyfriend said no immediately. My older sister disagreed. "You should go," she said. "She owes you a real apology, and if this isn't settled before the wedding, Mom will make it your problem forever." That prediction turned out to be right. Even though going to dinner didn't stop it, I told my boyfriend I wanted to give it one chance. He agreed because he loved me, and because neither of us realized just how determined my sister was to prove her point. When we arrived, I found out she had also invited my parents and my older sister. She said she wanted to apologize in front of everyone so no one could twist what had been said later. My quiet sister refused to come. I was annoyed that she hadn't warned us, but leaving right away would have caused another scene, so we stayed. Dinner started normally, almost too normally. She had cleaned the apartment, cooked dinner, and even bought my favorite dessert. She asked about our wedding venue and complimented my ring without touching it. My boyfriend stayed polite but cautious. I kept waiting for the apology. It never came. Instead, after dessert, she put down her fork and said, "I keep thinking about what you told me." My boyfriend looked at her. "What did I tell you? That you didn't see us becoming serious?" He glanced at me before looking back at her. "I said that when we broke up, but with her you knew." "No," he replied. "I got to know her." My sister gave a quiet laugh. "So what exactly does she have that I didn't?" My whole body tensed. "This isn't an apology, I'm just trying to understand." "No," I said. "You're trying to make him compare us." She ignored me and looked straight at him. "If I offered you everything she's offering now, would you still choose her?" He pushed his chair back slightly. "I'm not answering that." "Why not?" "Because it's inappropriate." She stood up. For a second, I thought she was going to walk away. Instead, she reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small ring. It took my brain a moment to process what I was seeing. When it finally did, I honestly wondered if I had fallen asleep at the table and was having some bizarre stress dream. She walked around the table, knelt in front of him, and held out the ring. "Then choose," she said. My boyfriend stood so fast that his chair slammed into the wall. "Get up." She held the ring out again. "Just answer." "No." The word came instantly firm and final. She still flinched. I walked around the table, furious, humiliated, and not thinking clearly. I told her to stand up. She looked at me and said, "Scared he'll hesitate." I shoved her shoulder. It wasn't a hard push, but she was already off balance from kneeling. She tipped sideways and caught herself against the couch. The room exploded. My mother screamed my name. My father stood up. My older sister swore. My boyfriend grabbed my arm and pulled me back. The moment I saw my sister on the floor, I knew I'd crossed a line. At the same time, I still wanted to scream at her, which wasn't exactly my proudest moment. "I'm sorry I pushed you," I said, breathing hard. "But what is wrong with you?" My mother rushed to my sister as if I'd thrown her down a flight of stairs. My father started toward us, then stopped halfway, torn between his wife and me. In the end, he followed my boyfriend and me into the hallway while my mother stayed with my sister. That alone said more than anything anyone shouted that night. In the car, my boyfriend stayed silent. I wanted him to tell me I had been justified. He didn't. "You can't put your hands on her," he finally said. "I know, she was completely out of line." "I know, but you still can't do that." "I know," I snapped. Then I started crying because I hated that he was right, and I hated even more that being right didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. A few days later, my older sister arranged a meeting at her apartment. She said she'd be there to make sure no one threw furniture or proposed marriage to an unwilling audience. I actually laughed before feeling guilty for laughing. My boyfriend came because I asked him to. My younger sister arrived late and sat down with her arms crossed. I apologized first. "I shouldn't have pushed you. I was angry, but that doesn't make it okay." She nodded once, no apology. My older sister looked at her. "Your turn." My younger sister stared at the floor. "I didn't actually think he'd say yes." "That makes me feel so much better," I replied. "I just wanted to see if he'd hesitate." My boyfriend leaned forward. "Why?" Her eyes filled with tears. This time, though, it didn't feel like an act. She looked genuinely ashamed. "Because when we dated, you said you weren't looking for anything serious. Then just a few months later, you got serious with her. You moved in together, you proposed." It made me feel like I was only good enough to pass the time with, while she was the one worth choosing. For the first time, I understood what was underneath all of her behavior. Understanding it didn't make it acceptable, but it did make it human. My boyfriend answered carefully, "I didn't date Claire to hurt you. I didn't know she was your sister. What happened between us was brief, and ending that relationship didn't give either of us permanent rights over the other person's future." My sister quietly wiped away her tears. "I know that logically, but not emotionally," my older sister said with a small, bitter laugh. "Apparently not." I asked her what she wanted now. She looked at me for a long moment before saying, "I don't think I should come to the wedding." The answer caught me off guard. I had expected her to ask to be included, not admit that she couldn't handle it. "Is that really what you want?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "I don't trust myself to sit there and act like everything is normal." It hurt to hear, but at least it was honest. "Okay," I said. Later, my mother acted as though I had banned her from the wedding. The whole invitation issue became public during my quiet sister's birthday dinner. She had picked a casual restaurant and made one request beforehand. No fighting. That alone tells you everything about birthdays in my family. For most of the meal, we actually managed it. My younger sister wasn't there, claiming she had a headache. I suspected I was the real reason for that headache, but I kept the thought to myself. My mother asked about the flowers. My older sister talked about dresses, and my father tried figuring out how many people could fit at each table, even though no one had asked him. Then my mother said, "I assume your sister's formal invitation is going out with everyone else's." I slowly put down my glass. "No." The table fell silent. My mother blinked. "What do you mean no? She decided she isn't coming. She only said that because she was upset." "No, she said it during a calm conversation and I respected her decision." I looked at her. What exactly was I supposed to do? Drag her down the aisle behind me? My quiet sister quietly whispered, "Please." It was her birthday and guilt hit me immediately. I lowered my voice. My mother didn't. "You're the older one, you're getting married, you have everything you want, you could show a little grace." There it was again, the mature one, the lucky one. The daughter who supposedly had so much that any pain caused to her somehow didn't matter. My sister got on one knee and proposed to my fiancé in front of me, I said. She was emotional, so was I. "You didn't seem very understanding then." My mother's expression hardened. "You pushed her, and I apologized. An apology doesn't erase what happened." Interesting. My older sister kicked me under the table before I could make the situation worse. I ignored the warning because I was already too angry to stop myself. Then my quiet sister placed both hands flat on the table. "Can we please not turn my birthday into another meeting about her?" Everyone froze. She almost never raised her voice. My mother looked offended, as though peace had been promised specifically to her. My quiet sister turned toward me. "I love you, I support you, but I'm asking everyone to stop." Right now, I apologized. My father quickly changed the subject. The rest of dinner dragged on until dessert, and I went home feeling like I had ruined someone else's birthday, even though I hadn't started the argument. That was another specialty in my family. My mother lit the match, but somehow I was blamed for the smoke. Over the next few days, she kept calling. She said family should come before misunderstandings. She actually called the proposal incident a misunderstanding, as if my sister had accidentally dropped to one knee while tying her shoe. She said people would gossip if one of my sisters missed the wedding. She asked how I planned to explain it to the relatives. I told her the truth would probably be enough. She didn't like that answer. I suggested she speak directly to my younger sister and ask if she wanted to come. Instead, she kept calling me. Eventually, the extended family got involved. Aunts I only heard from twice a year started sending messages about forgiveness. One cousin told me my mother was heartbroken. Several relatives from her side of the family said they wouldn't attend if my younger sister wasn't there. At first, I corrected them. She chose not to come. It didn't matter. The story had already been rewritten into something much easier to judge. Most of my father's relatives supported me. My older sister and my quiet sister confirmed they would still attend. My fiancé's family stayed out of the situation, although I could tell his mother was worried the wedding would turn into another public argument. Then our guest count dropped enough to create a financial problem. We had booked a medium-sized venue and paid a deposit based on a minimum number of guests. With so many people backing out, keeping the venue no longer made financial sense. Canceling meant losing part of our deposit, and it wasn't a small amount. It was money we had planned to save for emergencies and for the first few months after the wedding. Even after losing part of the deposit, canceling was still cheaper than paying the venue's full contracted minimum. One evening, my fiancé sat at the kitchen table with our budget spread out in front of him. "I think we should consider postponing," he said. What I heard was, "I don't want to marry you." That wasn't what he said, it wasn't even close, but I was exhausted, embarrassed, and terrified that my family had finally pushed him too far. "You want to postpone because of them? I want to postpone because we're losing money we can't easily replace, so they get exactly what they want. This isn't about winning, it feels like it is." He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. "Claire, continuing exactly as planned when the numbers don't add up isn't bravery, it's irresponsible." That word hit me hard. Irresponsible, it sounded like my mother. It reminded me of every time I'd been told I was failing to manage someone else's emotions. "I knew this would happen," I said. "What would happen? You'd decide my family is too much." He looked at me for a long moment. "Your family is too much." "That doesn't mean you are." I stood up so quickly that the chair scraped across the floor. "That's not any better." We argued for 3 days, not nonstop, of course. We went to work, ate tense dinners, slept facing opposite directions, and restarted the same argument every time one of us said the wrong thing. At one point, he admitted he'd lost confidence that my family would respect the ceremony. I accused him of wanting to avoid them. He accused me of treating financial caution like betrayal. I told him he was shutting down. He told me I was only hearing what I feared. He was right, which somehow made me even angrier. On the third night, he spread all of our account statements across the table. No more vague arguments, he said. Look, so I did, the lost deposit. The moving costs we were still paying after combining apartments, the medical bill he hadn't finished paying off, my small student loan. The amount we actually had left after our normal monthly expenses, he pointed to the numbers. I want to marry you. I don't care if it happens in that venue or in someone's backyard. I care that we don't start our marriage pretending money isn't real. I sat there quietly. I thought you were backing away. I'm trying to stand beside you without letting us walk off a financial cliff. It was frustrating because he was being completely reasonable. We decided not to postpone the wedding. Instead, we'd find a smaller venue, simplify everything except the lost deposit, and stop making decisions based on who might get offended. Around that time, the clinic announced it was opening a new location a few hours away in another city. Management invited employees to express interest in transferring. I glanced at the notice, dismissed the idea, then took a picture of it anyway. I also called my younger sister one more time and asked if she was certain about missing the wedding. Yes, she said. She sounded exhausted. I'm not asking you to change anything. Mom says you are. Mom says a lot of things. Have you told her that? She doesn't listen when the answer isn't useful. That sentence stayed with me. My mother's next move proved exactly what she meant. One afternoon, she came to our house thinking both of us were at work. My boyfriend had taken a half day because of an appointment that ended up being canceled, so he was home when she knocked. She asked to speak with him privately. He let her stand in the entryway but refused to discuss me unless I was there. She insisted she was only trying to prevent a family tragedy. He replied that a wedding invitation wasn't a tragedy. She told him he had more common sense than I did and should convince me to invite my sister. He calmly reminded her that my sister had chosen not to come. My mother replied, "That's what Claire claims." That was when his patience finally ran out. He told her to leave. Instead, she accused him of controlling me. She said I'd changed since meeting him. She claimed I'd never been this cruel to family before. He opened the door and asked her to leave again. She kept talking. He stepped outside, repeated that the conversation was over, then went back inside and closed the door. She remained on the porch for several minutes, speaking loudly enough for the neighbors to hear before finally leaving. When he called me, he sounded angry and shaken. I don't want contact with any of them anymore. Any of them, your family. My older sister didn't do this, neither did my quiet sister. I don't care. I'm done. That was exactly the wrong thing to say. I told him he didn't get to erase the people who had supported me just because he was angry with my mother. He said he was tired of waiting for the next family member to become a messenger. I said he was unfairly grouping everyone together. He answered that maybe it was safer that way. We were seconds away from another 3-day fight, then he stopped. He took a breath. You're right, he said. I'm angry. I'm putting all of them in the same box. That mattered. Not because it solved everything, but because he could admit when his anger made him unfair. In my family, that was almost a supernatural ability. I called my mother and told her she was never to approach him without me again. She insisted she'd only been trying to help. I said, you showed up at our house when you thought I wouldn't be there. I didn't know his schedule. You knew mine. She fell silent. If you contact him privately again, I'll stop responding to you. Her voice turned cold. So this is where we are now? No, I replied. This is where you brought us. After that, I stopped answering her daily messages. At first, the silence felt peaceful, then it felt strange. I kept checking my phone, expecting another message. When none came, I felt guilty. When one did, I felt angry. It was like my nervous system had been trained to wait for her. A few days later, my father said he was cleaning out the garage and wanted all 4 daughters to collect our old belongings. To avoid another confrontation, my older sister picked up my boxes and brought them to her apartment. That was where we found the photograph of the car. It was an ordinary old used car, faded, worn out, and nothing special. I'd helped pay for it as a teenager by working evenings and weekends. My parents had promised it would be mine for work and community college. Then my younger sister got her license, and suddenly she needed it more. When I protested, my mother told me to share because I was more responsible and could manage with the bus. My sister ended up using the car every day. I kept working to help pay the insurance. I hadn't thought about any of that in years. Then my older sister found one of my old school folders. Inside was a note from my mother. I had been 13. My younger sister had gotten into trouble after provoking another student. The note told me I needed to set a better example and help keep the peace at home. My older sister sat beside me on the floor. "Do you remember when I suggested family therapy?" she asked. I did. We'd gone to a few sessions years earlier after I moved out following another argument. My mother spent most of those sessions explaining why I should move back home. Whenever the counselor mentioned favoritism, she redirected the conversation toward my anger. She never wanted to understand. My older sister said she wanted a professional to convince you to cooperate. Holding that old note, I suddenly felt foolish for being surprised by anything happening now. "She's still asking me to do the same thing," I said. "She just changed the reason. I used to think my father was different because he was quieter. He hugged me after arguments. Sometimes he apologized privately for my mother's behavior. I mistook his discomfort for opposition. I still had to learn the difference." A week later, my mother went after my boyfriend at work. She got the address from my father. She told him she wanted to send an apology. Because he believed every problem could be solved if people simply spoke more gently, he gave her the address. She waited in the parking lot near the end of my boyfriend's shift. The moment he saw her standing beside his car, he turned back toward the building. She called his name and followed him. He told her he wouldn't speak to her unless I was present. She demanded to know why he was keeping me away from my sister. He simply said, "I'm not doing this." She stepped in front of him. He walked around her, then she grabbed his arm. It wasn't dramatic, not like something from a movie, just a furious woman gripping someone tightly enough to stop him from walking away. But even that ordinary kind of aggression can cross a line. He pulled away and told her to let go. Instead, she tightened her grip and said he was going to listen to her. A security guard noticed the argument and quickly came over. By the time the guards separated them, my boyfriend had a small scratch on his arm and several coworkers were watching through the lobby windows. My mother was ordered to leave the property. The company documented the incident and informed her that she was no longer allowed to return. When my boyfriend called me, his voice had that flat tone it always got when he was more upset than he wanted to admit. He wasn't seriously hurt. He didn't need medical attention. What affected him the most was the humiliation. He had to explain to his supervisor why his future mother-in-law had shown up at work and grabbed him in the parking lot. His supervisor was understanding, but she also made it clear that another incident could become a workplace issue. I drove to meet him after his shift. He sat quietly in the passenger seat while I stared at the red mark on his arm. "I'm so sorry," I said. He kept looking out the window. "I need this to stop." "I know, no," he replied. "I mean completely, not less often, not after the wedding. Stop." I knew he was right. At the same time, I felt trapped, which wasn't fair because he had been the one physically cornered by my mother. That night, I opened the photo I had taken of the clinic transfer notice and submitted an application. I didn't tell anyone except my boyfriend. Applying didn't mean accepting, but for the first time it felt like we had a way out. Then I called my father. I expected him to be horrified. I expected one simple sentence saying my mother had gone too far. That was all I wanted. Instead, after I explained everything, he sighed and asked, "What can you do to calm your mother down?" For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. "What can I do? She feels like the family is falling apart. She grabbed him at his workplace. I know, and she shouldn't have done that." The relief lasted less than a second. "But if you could let this go and find a way to include your sister, maybe your mother would stop reacting." I closed my eyes. There are moments when a relationship changes without anyone raising their voice. Something simply becomes impossible to ignore. My father wasn't trapped between us. He had chosen a side years ago. His side was always whatever kept my mother from directing her anger at him. She assaulted my fiancé at work. Using that word is only going to make everything worse. The action made everything worse. People are already talking. This is becoming a public family issue. It became public when she showed up in a parking lot. He kept asking me to think about the consequences. He meant the consequences for my mother. He always did. I remembered the car, the note, the therapy sessions, and every private apology he had given me after failing to defend me in public. "You don't protect me," I said. "That's not fair. You comfort me after she hurts me, then ask me to make it easier for her to do it again." He went silent. I waited for him to deny it. He didn't. Instead, he quietly said, "She's your mother." That sentence ended something inside me, "And I am your daughter." We ended the call without resolving anything. A few days later, I called both of them. My boyfriend offered to sit beside me, but I wanted to do it alone. I stood in our bedroom with the door closed and my notes open because I knew my mother would interrupt until I forgot what I wanted to say. I told her I was ending contact for an indefinite period. No calls, no visits, no messages through relatives, no contact with my boyfriend. I told my father I would only consider limited contact if he stopped acting as her messenger. My mother immediately started crying. She asked how I could do this right before my wedding. She said she had sacrificed everything for me. She said I was punishing her for caring too much. Then she became angry and accused my boyfriend of isolating me. Whenever my voice started shaking, I simply read from my notes, "This is my decision. You came to my home after I set a boundary. Then you went to his workplace and put your hands on him. I'm not debating whether that was acceptable." My father asked if we could all take a week to cool down. "No," I said. "We've already taken years." The call ended with my mother sobbing and my father warning that I would regret this. Maybe he thought those words would scare me. They did. I still ended the call. My boyfriend and I sent one message to the relatives who were still invited. We explained that the venue had changed and that only those who received direct confirmation would be given the location. We didn't explain every family detail. We didn't defend ourselves. We stopped trying to make the family look united. Afterward, I turned off my phone and cried on the bathroom floor. Relief and grief can exist at the same time. I felt lighter because the decision was finally clear, and heartbroken because that clarity didn't give me the mother I had always wanted. I kept reaching for my phone, only to remember there was nothing I wanted to read. Some relatives sent supportive messages. A few admitted they hadn't known the full story. Others stayed silent. One aunt sent a long message about how life was short, which is apparently something people say when they want you to tolerate behavior they would never accept from a stranger. Then my younger sister did something I never expected. She wrote in the family group that her decision not to attend the wedding had always been her own. She told everyone to stop using her name to justify a boycott. She said our mother had crossed a line by going to my boyfriend's workplace and had no right to claim she was defending her. My mother fired back with several furious messages. My sister replied only once, "You weren't defending me, you were using me." That ended the public argument. A few days later, my sister asked to meet me outside my building. I almost refused. Then I went downstairs because curiosity is often stronger than dignity, more often than I'd like to admit. She was standing near the entrance with her hands tucked into her coat pockets. "I should have said it sooner," she said. I waited. She looked uncomfortable. Good, I'd been uncomfortable for months. "I let Mom speak for me because part of me liked that she was angry at you," she admitted. I was still jealous, but I never asked her to go after him, and I never wanted everyone to skip the wedding. "Then why didn't you correct her?" I asked. Because correcting her would have meant admitting I was wrong too. That was probably the most honest thing she had ever said to me. She didn't ask for instant forgiveness. She didn't promise we'd suddenly become close again. She admitted she'd turned rejection into a competition, and our mother had used that competition the same way she'd always used our differences. "I gave her the excuse," she said. "No," I replied, "you didn't need one, but you gave her a convenient one." I thanked her for speaking publicly. It felt strange to thank someone for helping stop a disaster she had also helped create, but responsibility doesn't lose its value just because it comes late. We left without hugging. The wedding took place in a simple event room owned by my boyfriend's aunt. We borrowed decorations, shortened the guest list again, and served food from a local caterer instead of the formal dinner we'd originally planned. I'd spent months mourning the bigger wedding, but when the day finally arrived, the smaller room felt safer. My father came alone. Before the ceremony, he waited near the entrance and told me my mother had written a letter. My entire body tensed. "She asked me to bring it," he said. "But I wanted to ask if you even wanted it first." It was the first time he'd respected a boundary before crossing it. "I don't want it," he nodded. Okay, he didn't tell me she'd worked hard on it. He didn't ask me to think about it again. He didn't walk back to the car and return with the envelope anyway. It was a small moment. I didn't treat it as proof that everything had changed, but I noticed it. My younger sister didn't come. She sent a short message wishing us happiness and said no reply was necessary. I read it once, then put my phone away. During the ceremony, I looked at the first row. My older sister was crying openly. My quiet sister held her hand. My father sat beside them. The empty seat where my mother could have been was obvious, but it didn't consume the room. My husband squeezed my hand when my voice trembled. Nothing dramatic happened. No one interrupted. No one burst through the doors. The cake leaned slightly to one side. The music stopped for a few seconds, and one child dropped a cup during the vows. It wasn't perfect. It was peaceful. That was enough. A few days after the wedding, the clinic offered me the transfer. My husband and I sat at the same kitchen table where we'd argued about postponing everything. This time, we looked at the numbers together before letting our emotions take over. Moving would be expensive. Losing the venue deposit had already cut into our savings. He'd have to leave his job and find another one. The new city was far enough away to give us space, but close enough that we could still visit my sisters. We accepted. The move wasn't a magical escape. Our new apartment was smaller. For several weeks, my husband couldn't find steady work and took temporary maintenance jobs wherever he could. I worried constantly about money. One evening I snapped at him for buying takeout after a long day, then apologized because the real problem wasn't dinner. I was scared. Eventually, he found a permanent maintenance job. I settled into the new clinic where nobody knew my family's history, and the biggest daily crisis was usually a scheduling mistake. Months later, a new social media account sent me a message. The profile had almost no information, but it mentioned details only my mother would know. It said she had the right to see photos from her own daughter's wedding. I didn't reply. I blocked the account. Later, my younger sister told me she'd started therapy. She said she was trying to understand why being rejected by one man had made her feel like she had to defeat me. She didn't ask for forgiveness or expect an answer. I left her message unanswered for weeks. Eventually, I replied, "I hope therapy helps." That was all. Over time, we started exchanging occasional messages, a birthday, a holiday, a comment about our quiet sister's new apartment. We didn't become best friends. I didn't hand her full access to my life because she'd shown one moment of accountability. Trust came back in teaspoons, not buckets. My contact with my father stayed limited. We talked on important dates. Sometimes he started mentioning my mother, then caught himself. Other times he didn't, and I ended the call. There wasn't a dramatic reconciliation. There was simply a different pattern because I finally enforced one. My older sister and quiet sister visited us. My husband stayed cautious around my father and had no contact with my mother. I never asked him to forgive what happened. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty that my mother missed my wedding. Of course I do. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes to admit. You can know a boundary is necessary and still feel guilty for keeping it. You can love someone while refusing to give them access to your life. You can miss the mother you wished you had while staying away from the mother you actually have. I also feel guilty for pushing my sister. I'm embarrassed that I kept believing my father would finally become brave if I just explained everything perfectly. I regret some of the things I said to my husband when I mistook his financial caution for rejection. I wasn't calm, wise, or graceful through most of it. But I stopped volunteering to be the family's shock absorber. My mother spent years teaching everyone that my pain was manageable while my sister's pain was an emergency. My father helped by expecting me to absorb whatever kept the house quiet. My younger sister learned that humiliation could be turned into attention if she made it loud enough. And I learned to mistake endurance for maturity. Moving didn't fix all of that. Marriage didn't fix it either. What changed was smaller, less dramatic. When an unknown account messages me now, I block it instead of panicking. When my father asks me to reconsider something for my mother's sake, I end the conversation. When my sister says she's working on herself, I let her do that work without making myself the reward. And when my husband asks if I'm okay, I try to answer honestly instead of saying I'm fine, with the expression of someone ready to disappear into the woods. We built a life that's ordinary in the best possible way. Bills on the counter, grocery lists, arguments about laundry, calls with my sisters, quiet weekends. No one proposing to someone else's fiancé, no one waiting in a workplace parking lot. There are still days when I wish the ending were cleaner. I want my mother to call from her own number, admit exactly what she did, and apologize without adding a single, but I want my father to explain why protecting himself mattered more than protecting me. I want my sister to give back every moment my family taught me to surrender. None of that has happened. Real life rarely gives perfect endings just because you finally understand the story. All I have is the ability to decide what happens next, and some days, even that feels like hard work. Sometimes peace looks boring from the outside. After everything my family put me through, boring feels like a luxury.
If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. Now I want to hear your opinion. Do you think Claire made the right decision by cutting off her mother, or should she have given her another chance? Let me know in the comments. I read as many of them as I can. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notification so you never miss another Reddit story. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.